Here's something that will break your brain. There is a city, a fully functioning, architecturally perfect city, hidden at 8,000 feet above sea level, perched on a razor-thin mountain ridge with mile-deep cliffs on both sides. Its walls were built without iron tools, without cranes, without the wheel. Its drainage system has been running non-stop for 500 years without a single repair. And its stones are fitted together so precisely, so impossibly tight, that you cannot slide a knife blade between them. And when earthquakes hit, which they do over 200 times a year in Peru, the stones don't crack. They don't collapse. They dance. They shift, absorb the shockwave, and slide back into perfect position, like they were designed to be alive. This city was not built by aliens. It was not built by slaves being whipped to death. And it was not discovered by some heroic American explorer hacking through jungle vines. Everything you were told about Machu Picchu is wrong. Let's start over from the beginning. Stand at the edge of the ridge for a moment. Really picture this. You are on a narrow spine of mountain between two vertical cliffs. Each cliff drops nearly a full mile straight down. Below you, there is nothing but fog and cloud. You can't see the ground. The air is thin. The cold is the kind that doesn't leave your bones for hours. And all around you, there are walls, hundreds of them, precise, level, and uncracked, despite half a millennium of freezing rain, earthquakes, and time. This is Machu Picchu, and the name itself is the least impressive thing about it. Translated from Quechua, it means nothing more dramatic than Old Mountain. No sacred title, no ancient mystery encoded in the syllables. Just a practical description of a ridge that happened to become one of humanity's greatest engineering achievements. The site covers roughly 5 square kilometers. Packed into that space are around 200 structures: temples, royal palaces, astronomical observatories, sophisticated water channels, and residential quarters. Every single building is made from enormous blocks of white granite. The largest of these blocks weigh between 100 and 150 tons, roughly equivalent to 2 fully loaded railroad freight cars stacked on top of each other. Some of the foundation monoliths are even heavier, and all of it, every last ton of stone, was hauled to the top of a mountain at 8,000 feet above sea level, without roads, without wheels, without iron tools, without any machine that a 15th century Spanish engineer would recognize. When modern structural engineers visit Machu Picchu for the first time, most of them go quiet. Not because the view is beautiful, though it is, because they genuinely cannot work out the math. They can't figure out how you calculate this, how you plan this, how you execute it with zero written documentation, zero blueprints, and tools made from stone and plant fiber. That silence tells you everything. Let's talk about the terraces first, because most people look at them and see landscaping, decoration, a nice visual touch on the hillside. That is completely wrong. The Inca called them andenes, and if you were a hydraulic engineer studying them for the first time, you wouldn't see decoration. You'd see one of the most sophisticated water management systems ever constructed in the ancient world. Each terrace is cut at a precise angle, calibrated so that rainwater drains downward through carved channels rather than pooling and saturating the soil beneath. Machu Picchu receives nearly 7 feet of rainfall per year. Without this system, the entire mountain would have turned to mud within a few rainy seasons, and the whole city would have slid silently into the canyon below. That drainage network is still fully operational today, not restored, not maintained, just running, as it has been for 5 centuries, without a single repair. Now the walls. Look closely at the stonework and you'll notice something strange. The blocks are not mortared together. There is no cement, no binding material of any kind. But there's something else, something even more counterintuitive. The stones are not flush with each other. There is a barely perceptible gap between them, an intentional gap. To a 21st century observer, this looks like a flaw, like someone didn't finish the job. It is, in fact, a solution to one of the most complex problems in construction: what to do about earthquakes. Peru sits in one of the most seismically active regions on the planet. Tremors happen constantly, over 200 recorded earthquakes per year. Rigid structures, no matter how strong, eventually crack and crumble under this kind of repeated stress. The Inca understood something that modern engineers have only recently redocumented in their own research. The best way to survive movement is to move with it. The tiny gaps between the stones allow them to shift microscopically when a shockwave passes through the mountain. They absorb the energy. Then, when the shaking stops, gravity pulls them back into alignment. The city quite literally dances through earthquakes and comes back to rest in perfect position. This is a 15th century anti-seismic system. No formulas, no structural engineering degree, no paper calculations. Just deep, accumulated knowledge translated directly into stone. Then there is the Intihuatana. The name means the place where the sun is tied. It is a single monolith carved directly from the bedrock of the mountain, not placed there, but part of the mountain itself. Its four faces are aligned with the cardinal directions to within an arc minute, and twice every year, at the precise moment of the spring and autumn equinoxes, the sun rises directly above its sharpest corner, and the shadow disappears completely. Not diminishes, not shrinks, vanishes. Zero shadow, even partial, for a measurable moment in time. No mysticism required. Pure positional astronomy, executed with flawless precision by people who had never looked through a telescope. In 1911, an American named Hiram Bingham III climbed up to the ridge. He was a historian and explorer from Yale, and he had been searching for a different lost city entirely. He reached Machu Picchu with the help of a local farmer named Melchor Arteaga, who guided him there in exchange for a handful of coins. At the top, among the ancient terraces and temples, Bingham found something nobody had told him to expect: living people. The Cusi family had been farming potatoes on the terraces and knew the name of every single stone. They had never left. Bingham discovered Machu Picchu in roughly the same way Christopher Columbus discovered America, by arriving somewhere that people already lived, taking credit, and packaging it for a distant audience who had never been paying attention. So whose city was it, really? The answer was eventually found not in Peru, but buried in Spanish colonial archives. Machu Picchu was the private royal estate of Sapa Inca Pachacuti, the ruler who, beginning in 1438, transformed a small highland tribe into the largest empire in pre-Columbian history, the Tawantinsuyu, four corners of the world, an empire of 12 million people stretching from the Pacific coast to the Amazon rainforest, from modern-day Colombia to Chile, the most powerful state in the entire Western Hemisphere at the time of its peak. Machu Picchu was, essentially, his summer palace. Construction began around 1450 and was largely complete by 1470. 20 years of work. Then Pachacuti died. The Spanish invasion came. Waves of disease swept through the population. The entire imperial administrative structure collapsed within a generation, and Machu Picchu, no longer needed and no longer visited by anyone with the authority to maintain it, was simply let go. Nobody burned it, nobody tore it down, nobody made a decision about it. The jungle came back slowly, quietly, and covered it over like a green tide. And here is the detail that should genuinely disturb you. The Spanish destroyed everything they found. Temples, libraries, manuscripts, entire cities reduced to rubble and reused as building material. They were thorough and they were ruthless. But they never found Machu Picchu. Not one conquistador ever set foot on those terraces. Not a single Spanish chronicle from the entire 16th century contains so much as a passing reference to it. A royal city, a masterpiece of engineering, the private retreat of the greatest ruler in the Americas, and it simply vanished from the historical record as though it had never existed. For 400 years, the mountain kept its secret. Subscribe if you want to know what else the mountains of this planet are still keeping to themselves. This is where the internet collapses into chaos. Ask anyone how 150-ton granite blocks were hauled up an 8,000-foot mountain without machines, and within seconds you'll have people confidently explaining aliens, sonic levitation technology, or interdimensional ley lines. Here is what actually happened. In the late 1990s, a team of engineers from Peru and the United States ran a physical experiment. Not a computer model, not a theoretical calculation, an actual experiment with real granite. They took a 10-ton block, assembled a crew of 120 people, equipped them with wooden levers and ropes braided from plant fiber, and sent them uphill. They moved approximately 1 mile per day. Brutal, exhausting, but completely doable without a single piece of modern technology. And here's the part of the story that makes archaeologists smile. Most of the stones at Machu Picchu were never moved far at all. The quarries were found within a few hundred feet of the city walls. Some rough-cut blocks are still sitting exactly where they were abandoned, holes half drilled into them, tools left beside them, as though the workers stepped away for lunch one afternoon in 1470 and simply never came back. That's what real archaeology looks like. Not dramatic theories, evidence. As for how the stones were cut to such extraordinary precision, edges so sharp and surfaces so flat that the fitted joints are still airtight 500 years later, the answer is quartz. Quartz is harder than granite on the Mohs hardness scale. Inca craftsmen used quartz hammerstones, and archaeologists found them in the construction debris. The method was essentially iterative, like debugging a piece of code. Place 2 stones side by side. Study the gap. Remove a small amount of material from the high points. Check again. Remove more. Repeat. Over days, weeks, sometimes months, until the surfaces came together with the precision of machined parts. No mystery, just patience, skill, and an almost meditative level of craftsmanship. For generations, the assumption was straightforward. An empire builds like empires always build. Coercion. Masses of slaves driven by fear and whipped to death under the stones. It was the narrative that made sense to people who had only ever seen empire operate that way. The bones said otherwise. Bioarchaeologists who analyzed skeletons from burials near the city walls found no evidence of systematic violence, no mass trauma, no signs of the brutal physical abuse that marks forced labor populations in other ancient contexts. What they found instead was something far stranger and more interesting. A workforce that came from almost everywhere. Isotope analysis, which reads the chemical signature in bones like a passport, revealing where someone was born, what they ate, and where they spent their childhood, showed that the majority of people buried near Machu Picchu weren't local mountain people at all. Some came from the Pacific coast, others from the Amazon lowlands, others from high-altitude plateaus hundreds of miles away. Machu Picchu was a melting pot of peoples and cultures, 500 years before anyone thought to coin that phrase. The Inca used a system called mita, a state labor obligation in which citizens contributed work in exchange for food, clothing, shelter, and medical care provided directly by the empire. Not a prison, not a slave plantation. A different kind of social contract, one built on reciprocity rather than pure extraction. At the peak of construction, researchers estimate between 4,000 and 10,000 people were working here simultaneously. Not across different years, simultaneously, in one place, on one mountain at 8,000 feet above sea level. Worker rotations were scheduled months in advance. Tool storage was organized. Medical care was provided on site. Supply chains were managed across hundreds of miles of mountain terrain. All of it coordinated without a single staff meeting, without a written memo, and without a spreadsheet. They weren't primitive, they were just different. And this is where the story becomes genuinely unsettling. The entire coordination system, thousands of workers, tens of thousands of tons of material, a logistics operation spanning an empire of 12 million people, ran without writing. The Inca had no alphabet. Not a letter, not a hieroglyph, not a pictograph. No written language of any kind. Their documentation system was the quipu, knotted cords in which every knot, every color, every type of fiber, every distance between knots carried encoded information. Population counts, tax records, astronomical calendars, military deployments, agricultural yields. All of it stored on wool and cotton cords that could be rolled up and carried by a single runner across the length of the empire. We have decoded roughly a third of the surviving quipu. The other 2/3 remain silent. The people who knew how to read them fully are gone, and we are still slowly, carefully working out what they were saying. Think about that for a moment. We have been studying Machu Picchu for over 100 years. We still cannot fully read the records its builders left behind. We look at these stones and assume the people who made them were simpler than us. But consider what they accomplished. They built a city that has survived 500 years of earthquakes, conquered the information management problem for 12 million people without a single word of written text, and engineered drainage and anti-seismic systems that our modern infrastructure is still trying to replicate. If they could look at us, they might reasonably wonder why we need so many words, so many devices, and so many meetings to do so much less. The story isn't over, not even close. Geophysicists using LiDAR scanning, laser technology that sees through vegetation and soil, have already detected traces of structures beneath the terraces that no one knew existed. Sealed chambers, possible storage rooms, possible tombs. Possibly something we don't yet have the vocabulary to describe. Excavation is currently prohibited. UNESCO protects every square inch of the site, and rightly so. Because the biggest threat to Machu Picchu right now is not time, not erosion, not even earthquakes. It's us. 1.5 million tourists visit per year. The stones that outlasted the conquistadors, that survived centuries of jungle overgrowth, that danced through earthquakes, are now being slowly ground down by the rubber soles of sneakers. The structures that held through everything are being touched, breathed on, and photographed to death by the very people who love them most. There are quipu we haven't decoded, chambers we haven't opened, questions we haven't even thought to ask yet. And somewhere in those sealed rooms beneath the terraces, there may be answers to things we don't know we're missing. Pachacuti built this city in 20 years. We've been studying it for more than 100. And we still don't fully understand it. Maybe that's the real lesson buried in these stones. We tend to define progress as accumulation. More technology, more speed, more data, more power. This place offers a different definition. Sometimes progress means going deeper, understanding a material so completely that the stones place themselves, understanding nature so precisely that a drainage system runs 5 centuries without intervention, understanding the sky so clearly that a shadow vanishes at exactly the right moment on exactly the right day, not because of magic, but because of accumulated generations of careful observation. Anti-seismic construction without formulas, hydraulics without pumps, astronomy without telescopes, logistics without paper, an empire without written language. Just stone, just patience, just a level of concentrated, embodied knowledge that we have mostly forgotten how to value, because we stopped needing it when we invented ways to outsource it. Machu Picchu isn't a postcard. It isn't a mystery waiting to be solved. It's a mirror. And the thing it's really asking us every time we look at it is a question about ourselves. What did we lose when we decided we'd found everything? Subscribe if you want to know what else the mountains of this planet are still keeping to themselves.